Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back on the Alfarrari, finishing off a lot of those little details. Alright guys, welcome back, and if you've been watching, you know that this is the Alfarrari. This is my 1973 Alfa Romeo GTV 2000 that I have completely restored and fitted a Ferrari 360 V8. If you missed the last episode, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and like always, comment and like. Those things particularly really help that algorithm. Now, in the last video, I actually got my indicators working that I got put into this car from a Mini. What I didn't realize is I was driving around for about a week and I never checked my wiring, and I'd actually had them wired up backwards. It was only when I turned up to Cars and Coffee on the weekend and people saw me turning in with the indicators going the wrong way. So I sorted that out. That was very quick and easy. There were a bunch of comments about the 3D printed end of my indicator stalk, and there are lots of people saying that you can use fiberglass resin, you can sand it and paint it. I have sanded and painted before. That's what I did with the badges on the 680G, but I don't want to do that. I want to be able to just melt it, and there is ways you can do it with just the acetone vapor. I think basically a small fan or something in with the vapor around the part can actually just agitate it enough to get the edge to melt a little bit. I just need to sand it and make it a little better. I will print it again with a base on it that I'll have to physically break the base off, but because I did have it with supports, but that wasn't strong enough and it just snapped off every time, so it wouldn't print. In any case, because we have that new indicator in there and we've moved everything around, the next thing I need to do is I need to spend some time and design up a new column shroud to hide all of that wiring mess and make it look something a little bit like factory. All right, and you can see what we're currently dealing with here. We have all of this area completely exposed, all of this mounting points, and around the other side, it's similar. We have the sort of all exposed wires and things that we need to cover in and make look a little bit neater. So I think the first thing I need to do to design a new column shroud is I'm going to scan that entire area. Then I can take it into CAD and I can try and make something up. Okay, so this week my task is to make a surround for my steering column, and as you can see here, I actually took a scan of my existing steering column, so you can see it's not a great scan, but I have enough detail for what I need. I've actually got my indicator in an up and down position, and same with the headlight stalk in the high beam and low beam position. I did that as two separate scans, and then in the OnStar software they actually stitch together, which is perfect for this situation so that I can see the range of travel I need to account for. It's not a complete scan, but it's enough to get me out of trouble. And I am definitely no expert at CAD, and this is the first time I've sort of really managed to use a scan to make a component. And after many hours, this is what I came up with. So you can see here that I go around my steering column, room here for the stalks of the indicator and the headlight stalk, and keyhole, etc. So it should sit quite nicely in this case, and you can see here that it's actually quite a cool shape. I am definitely not amazing at CAD, but I'm getting much better, and this program, not sponsored, Fusion 360 is what I'm using, and it's relatively expensive, but there is free versions to use, I believe. I do pay for this. What it allows me to do is absolutely fantastic. Now, this is still not the final design, as I still need to put in some mounting points and things like that. I just want to go through a couple of the key features of Fusion that I think are absolute game changers for designing your own 3D printed parts. So let me do a quick demonstration of designing a very basic part. Let's just do a basic circle here, 70 millimeters, and then we need to do, let's finish that sketch, and then we want to construct an offset plane above this, say 100 millimeters away. Oh, no, 100 millimeters away. In 3D space, this plane here is 100 millimeters from my circle. Let's draw something on this plane, and let's draw another circle, and the bottom one was 70, so let's call this one 100. All right, and now we have these two circles that are 100 millimeters apart, and they're not the same size, so I can't just sort of extrude this one because that would only give me a straight shape. What I want to do instead is I can create a loft, and by creating a loft from there to there, Fusion does the hard work for me. But that is still a little bit plain. One of the features that I found that makes things so much cooler is if we go over to here and go direction, and then we can mess around with it, and we can start getting some cooler shapes. And that's where Fusion's abilities to sort of make some of these really cool shapes rather than just having a plain conical shape. The other key feature that makes this really easy to make as a 3D printed piece is the shell command. So if I click on that end and that end, and I want a wall thickness of 2 millimeters, it has automatically hollowed the whole thing out and given me a 2 millimeter wall thickness. And I can hit 3D print and export this as an STL file that goes straight to my 3D printer. And let's just call this demo. And then I just have to go over to this week's sponsor, which is Bamboo Labs. So I just need to add my project. There is my demo. I can just auto rotate. It'll automatically locate it in the best orientation to print it out. If we slice the plate, it will tell me that it can make this. It's going to take a total of 64 grams of filament. It's going to cost me $1.60, and it's going to take an hour and 11 minutes to print it. I just hit print plate, send it to the printer, and I will have the finished part in just over an hour. If you're not confident on CAD or not interested in learning it, you don't need to. You can jump onto sites like MakerWorld and download free files that other people have come up with to print out. And one of the fantastic things that I've come across is Gridfinity. So it's a free storage system, and you can do things like organize all your socket sets. And with the Bamboo Labs AMS system, you can print in multiple colors. So you could print in 2 colors with all the labels, and people have already come up with almost anything you can think of, from spanners and screwdrivers, even to things like Clecos. I have now got a prototype, or at least an idea of what I need for my column shroud. And that is what I am printing out here with the Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon. It has totally changed the way I look at builds and at fabricating in general. The world of possibilities has now opened up, as opposed to my previous 3D printers, which was a project, it was a hobby, it always took little tweaks to keep trying to get things right. This is a tool that does a job, and it does it very well. This is PLA at the moment on my AMS. So basically I have 4 different types of filament. I've got 2 PLA set up here and 2 ASA. ASA and ABS is what I use in the vehicles because it has a much higher melting point, so it can withstand the heat inside a car, whereas PLA is easy to print, but it's got a lower melting point, and basically it will warp inside the vehicle. This has currently been printing for about 3 hours, and it's still got a couple of hours to go, and that's the beauty of it. I can just set it up and leave it. So go and check out Bamboo Labs. My affiliate link's in the description, and have a look. There is a bunch of different options for all different price ranges, so just go and check them out. I cannot recommend Bamboo Labs highly enough. The quality of their printing is just so much better than what I've done before, and there's a whole range of different machines that you can get depending on your budget and your needs, etc. But getting a tool like this just totally opens up the possibilities of what you can just do yourself at home for building parts or organisation things or basically anything. So check them out. All right, let's keep going. All right, and my first iteration didn't quite fit because my scan is not 100%. I didn't get the back of all these components, and ended up I had some areas where it did interfere, and I mangled it to just get a rough idea of if it's close. And I modified that design and printed it again, and now we have a piece that fits. And you can see here, this lower section is sitting nicely, sits around the column nicely. And all the way over this side as well. It sits here quite nicely, and there's actually room for the indicators to travel and also for the light switch. Trying to do this with one hand is interesting, but yeah, there's enough room for the light switch to function and the indicators to also function. The only issue that I have is that the top won't currently fit on, and I knew that was going to be the case because the dash currently touches just here. My plan was always to modify the dash. I can do that by taking this out, and we can actually trim that corner off and then wrap the leather again. So let's remove the dash. So I've had the dash in and out of this car a lot of times now, and thankfully on this old car it's actually quite an easy dash to remove. Modern cars are a total nightmare. Bulk of the dash is only held in by 4 bolts, and they're relatively easy to get to once you remove the gauge cluster, etc. Once it's out, I carefully peel back the leather trim and then mark the piece I want to cut out to give myself a guide. And then I just cut it off with the air saw. It's foam with a bit of steel backing. Clean it up with the angle grinder and then put it back in the car to test fit and see if I have enough clearance. And it needs a little bit more trimming, so out it comes again, mark it again, cut it again, back again with the angle grinder. And once I'm happy it's all tidied up, it's back in again, hopefully for the final test fit. Alright, and now we have enough clearance. The indicators work. I've just loosely taped this together, but it actually is doing what it needs to do. And we have a column shroud doing column shroud things. So I need to glue in the leather dash again and tidy that up, bolt it back in, and then we can go and start printing out the final piece out of ASA, which will stand up to the heat in the car. So now I'm happy with the fit. I can re-glue on the leather of the dash with the same glue I used to make it in the first place, trim it up, and then I can fit the dash back in and leave it there. This includes, of course, fitting all the air conditioning ducting and stuff like that. And in the background, while I was doing all of this, my final column shroud was in the 3D printer printing out. That's the beauty of the 3D printer, you just set it and forget it. Alright, so I was happy with my mock-up, so I did a little bit more refinement and I printed up my ASA pieces. Now, this is how it comes out of the printer with the supports. I'll just break all the supports off. All right, and here are my finished pieces. So the finish is actually quite decent. If you can see this here, that surface finish actually looks quite nice. And the only issues I had was that this piece here warped a little bit. So this has a bit of a curve like that. So I may reprint the bottom piece. I did actually make some joining tabs with these. I should have actually made them dowels, and I may actually print it again. That's the beauty of this thing, is it cost me a few dollars to print this, and I can just modify the design slightly and print it again. But I made you can see these little mounting spikes, and then on this side I actually have holes that are big enough for my screws to go through and screw together, so that I can actually join them together and have a surround that goes onto this. So let's screw it on and see what it looks like. So first I have to remove the old PLA part and then replace it with the ASA version. And you can see here that I am screwing it together, and this is where I first work out that I should have actually made dowels that go into each other in the design so that it snugs together nice and square. All right, we have my shroud here. It fits beautifully all the way around the column. I think that's what I was looking for. We have room for the stalks to move. The the shroud is looking really good. There are some issues. Now, here you can see where this lower piece has warped, and also because I have no locating lip, these aren't necessarily aligning perfectly. Even though they're screwed into the holes, the alignment is not perfect, and I think I need to do a little bit of something about that to try and fix that alignment issue. But overall, I am very happy with the result. So the concept works. I'm very happy with the result of this, but I'm going to have to spend some more time on CAD redesigning and reprinting these parts, which is very time consuming, so I'll update you on a future episode on how that goes. All right, so the next thing that I want to look at is last week I was working on the stalk end for the indicator, and I was trying to smooth it out. There were lots of suggestions. Some people were talking about sanding it and painting it and fiberglassing and stuff. I don't want to do any of that. I want to keep it plastic. It's already plastic and it can be better. I've seen lots of images of people doing the acetone vapor smoothing. So it's a balance that needs to be looked at, and there's different versions of it. There's passive versions and active versions. I'm thinking I'm going to try something a little bit more active rather than passive, and we'll see how that goes. Now, this is the one I showed you last week, and I started getting it smooth, and you can sort of see the bottom of it. This has been sitting out for a week, but see how it's nice and shiny, and it did actually do what it's supposed to do, is basically just start melting the surface and getting that glossy plastic finish that it should have, and removing the layer lines. Now, there are lots of suggestions about how to print this piece using a brim and things like that, which I successfully used on the column shroud. I tried multiple different methods. I have had so many failures where it gets close and it just knocks it over at the end. I tried extra supports and all sorts of stuff. Sitting this on its end, because it's such a small base, even with a big brim around it, it just breaks off near the end. I had another one with a support on the side and it still broke off. But I got another piece, and I actually tried a little bit earlier. I sanded it. So this was printed flat, and I sanded off a lot of the grot and wiped it with acetone, and it left this milky sheen on it, which is not very nice and not very desirable. But the actual piece is looking pretty good. It's reasonably smooth. It's still got layer lines in it. I don't mind some. I just wanted a nice, consistent, black, relatively smooth shape, and that's what we're going to try and do now. So what I need to do is I want to make up a better base, and I have a glass jar now, and let's have another go at this vapor smoothing. So first I want to make a little standoff out of a bit of scrap with a bit of rod. I'll just weld them together and then fold it up so it sits inside the jar. Last week you saw that I tried using a bit of acetone in the bottom of this plastic container, and I just had a piece of cardboard over the top. I probably should have sealed it better. I sat the acetone in the bottom of the cup, and then I sat this piece inside, spaced off of it, so it's not sitting in the liquid, it's just sitting in the vapors, and it started to work a little bit. Now, there are different versions that I did some research on smoothing ABS plastic. This is ASA plastic, but still similar methods apply. You can do passive methods where you just basically have some cloth around the edge of a container that you dampen a bit with acetone, close it up and leave it for half an hour or so. I'm going to try something a little bit more dangerous. What I'm going to try is I'm going to lightly heat the outside of the jar so that it will turn the acetone into a vapor and sort of speed up the process a little bit. Some people do it in like a water boiler and things like that. This one is far more dangerous because I'm using flames. There could be explosions, there could be also, like, don't do this at home. So again, don't try this at home, but I'm adding some acetone here, and then I'm sitting the lid on. I'm not doing the lid up, I'm leaving it cracked open so that it can expand, and I'm adding a tiny little bit of heat to the bottom of the jar only. So that is what it looks like after only a couple of seconds in there. But you can still see a few layer lines, but it's actually looking nice and shiny and to be honest, that would be good enough, but I might run it just a little bit longer and just let the vapors do a little bit more of the work. All right, and while I'm waiting for those vapors to do their job, I think I'll just fill you in on some of the details from last week's episode. If you're watching, you will have seen that our daily driver, Porsche Macan, died. Basically had a massive fuel leak. I didn't want to touch it. These modern cars, I don't have the motivation to work on them myself. Yes, I could do it, but it's not interesting for you and it's not interesting for me to do maintenance things on these cars. But basically what had happened is the seals around the injectors, there were a couple of them that had just perished, cracked and broken, and it was just pouring fuel out completely. So I got all of those replaced. It was down for one day and that was good. But it did prompt a lot of people to ask questions about Barb, the Mercedes E220 that I have as another semi-daily driver. That is still going. I have not fixed the idle issue. I can drive it. I can sort of get it to work, but it's a bit difficult for Mrs. Jeff to drive. You've got to drive with 2 feet. You've got to, when you're braking, even slowing down for a roundabout, you've got to keep some revs on and stop it from stalling. And it's not ideal, but I'm still using it. It's still going to be moving forward. And as I mentioned previously, I am considering doing an engine swap on that at some stage, because I don't want to keep pouring good money after bad on the engine, which is really gutless and not interesting anyway. It's the least interesting part of that car, so that may be something for the future. The other car obviously is Harry, and Harry has been filling in doing some daily duty work while the Macan is out, so that has been Mrs. Jeff's car to be able to drive to work and things like that when she needed it. So at least now I have a few things to keep me going, but that is a little update. Let's go and check out and see how those vapors have gone. And this is where I left it. I could definitely leave it longer to get rid of more of these layer lines, but I'm quite happy with the gloss of that. That is going to work perfectly well in the car. So now I start mixing up some 2-part epoxy that I can put into the cap to then glue it onto the stalk, and then into the end of the stalk itself so that I can mount it to the mini stalk inside the car. Note, I've actually got my welding jacket down underneath it just in case it dripped, which it didn't, but better to be safe than sorry. All right, well, that was a lot of messing around, slightly different episode this week. Just lots of time spent sitting on the laptop, just designing and tweaking designs to get the surround looking close to what I need. I'm still not happy. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do some more work on the design and see if I can come up with something a little bit better, something that locks into itself, and we'll show you what that looks like in another episode. But for now, I think that is it. So I think it means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, today Ferrari is the biggest sports car brand in the world, but it didn't start that way. Enzo Ferrari had been working at Alfa Romeo running their race team, which he had named Scuderia Ferrari. In 1939 he had a falling out with Alfa Romeo, and a clause in his contract meant that he could not manufacture cars in his own name for 6 years. As such, he moved on to start his own race car company, which he called Auto Avio Costruzioni. This small company built an open-top 2-seater with an 8-cylinder 1500cc engine, which they called the 815. Only 2 of them were ever built, and by 1940, all manufacturing was forced to help the war effort. Enzo Ferrari's company then pivoted, and they started manufacturing ball bearings. By the time the war was over, Enzo Ferrari's 6 years was up, and he began Ferrari as we know it. As for the 2 Auto Avio Costruzioni 815s, well, one was crashed in 1958 and was scrapped. The other one still exists and would be one of the most valuable cars in the world today.
All right, well, this week was a little bit all over the place, just so much time on the computer. I am not the greatest guy on CAD, but I'm getting better at it, and obviously practice is one of these big things, and I'm really happy with the design I managed to make. I'm going to refine it a bit more and get that shape better so that they clip together and they sort of, like a factory one would. But that's for another episode. I'll show you that when I get there.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Well done. Like, subscribe, Jeff, like so your comments, obviously, and Patreon, of course, if you want to help Jeff out in his journey towards car building domination. And see the videos today early with no ads.
Just seems like a journey towards forever in the garage.
Forever.
That's basically it. Nothing changes. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
But I'm having fun. That's the main thing.
So the main thing.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, guys. Hey, guys. Today, Ferrari is the biggest sports race car. As such, he moved on to start his own sports race company.
No.
Race car company. As such, he moved on to start his own sports car race. Yes. Got it right that time.